The government is banking on a mix of ordinary revenue, grants and service fees to fund its ambitious budget. Treasury targets a collect of 2.7 trillion shillings in ordinary revenue and an additional 560 billion through fees and levies, bringing the total projected revenue to 3.3 trillion. That's just about 64% of the funds needed. The Treasury hopes to raise an additional 46.9 billion in grants, but even with that, a deficit of 876 billion remains, a gap the government intends to fill through borrowing. But the recent revenue underperformance has raised questions over the viability of this plan.
Thus, that the budget that we have will not be sufficiently funded. Just building on what we've seen in previous years. And we've always set very ambitious revenue targets, which often leads to a growth in the deficit during the year of implementation, and it has in the last 11 years. 9 out of those 11 years, that deficit has actually grown during the period of implementation between.
With businesses struggling and individual incomes under pressure, experts warn that reduced disposable income could further dampen tax collection efforts. Economic analysts are sounding the alarm, arguing that the current strategy is unsustainable. They advise the government to curb its spending and reconsider its heavy borrowing plans. There are also fears that increased domestic borrowing could crowd out the private sector, making it harder for consumers and businesses to access credit.
There should be sincerity in wanting growth in our economy. Growth in an economy happens if you incentivize private enterprise to thrive. Now we have an economy where is either public sector or patronage. We need to let private enterprise thrive, because there is no government that does any business a favor by giving them a conducive environment. It is the business that does an economy a favor by establishing their base in our economy.
Despite the concerns, Treasury Cabinet Secretary John Mbadi remains optimistic, saying the targets are achievable with enhanced compliance and reforms.
Munaweza fanya budget muweke grant kama ile pesa mnagojea kujenga uchumi wetu nayo. Na hao mnagojea wampe hizo grants wakikata.
We don't just wake up and assume that a grant will come. These grants are negotiated. And by the way, the grants are just elements of the funding. You will find the debts, the loans come with the grant component.
As the debate around the budget intensifies, the spotlight remains on the government's ability to balance its physical ambitions with economic realities. Emmanuel Barasa reporting for News Outlook at 1, Tandao TV.